Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us again on Sundays with Sheetal. Um, Today is a really interesting talk for me because the speaker I have known socially for a decade. And so when you're meeting somebody socially, it's all fun and frolic and eat and drink and dance and party. And it's very less conversation, even though I've known her for a decade. But a chance conversation a few months ago revealed an extremely different dimension to her, which I thought was so revealing and so deep. And I thought she fits right into what Sundays with Sheetal is all about. So let me introduce you to Tamanna Pasha. Um, Welcome, Tamanna. I'm going to give a
Good.
small intro about you. She's Tamanna's an ex-actor, model, event curator, and all of those things. But she's also um, she's somebody who's turned her passion for helping people evolve into um, their true selves into her purpose. It's no longer just a passion, it's a purpose now. And in that spirit, she's also become a certified life transformation coach, and she practices in Bangalore, and she's very popular with the corporate world. She's an outspoken advocate for mental health, a cause that is personal for her. And until recently, even I didn't know. And I'm sure a lot of people we meet socially didn't know that she herself has battled mental health issues as a teen. So, a diehard optimist. I mean, I've never seen her without a smile. She describes herself as a free spirited geek who loves to travel and read and is currently writing a book on mental health. Um, it's about resilience, mental resilience, and happiness. So relevant today, given the pandemic situation. It's bringing a lot of people to a place of stillness where they're trying to discover or rediscover actually who they truly are without the manic pace of life as it has been in the last few years. So things have slowed down, time to reflect, time to delve deep. And Tamanna is here to do this deep dive into this topic with us. Welcome again, Tamanna.
Thank you so much, Sheetal, for the warm welcome and for everyone watching us live. Hola. Nice to see you guys online. I haven't seen people for so long. I think
I
we're
know,
all
right? I know.
as
And
if
for
people
us,
had to
social,
take sannyas, to go into a forest to find that space to be
yeah,
alone. I think we've all become sannyasis in a way.
yeah. And we've been such social people. This has been a real change of pace for us, a lot of us.
I
So,
can picture.
yeah. So, would you like to tell us how you got into this field, first of all?
I think when you have personally been through a life that has been challenging in different ways, and for me, I found that through my own challenges over my own journey, I really needed a kind of emotional support and a helping hand. I know how my personal journey has been that of an evolution and how it has, if there was something that would help me when I was going through my challenges, just having that feeling that I wish I can help people. So the most gratifying times to me personally are when people tell me that I've had an impact in their lives. So I think that's something that comes as a deep calling from within, that feeling that I wish I can just do a little more to be able to be help to be able to be of help to people who are sort of on that journey of self discovery, or who are feeling lost in life, or who are feeling emotionally challenged.
So, now when we say discover the authentic you really mean rediscover the real you, right?
Yeah.
Because we're all born a certain way, and that's the real us, and then we are conditioned to things. Where and how does one disconnect from their true self? Or is it different
Uh,
for different people?
so if you look at a child, the child is an epitome of, how they say, be happy like a child, be free like a child. You see a child, and if you've spent some quality time around a child, you know that they are able to present themselves in the most authentic way at all given points, unless something new is there around them. If they are in their comfort zone, they are unabashedly themselves. They are making us, they are loud, they are confident, they are bold. They are able to present every aspect of what we look at, what we forget, the true joy or confidence or compassion. Children actually are inborn with a lot of these qualities naturally. But what happens is, as we grow up, there's a lot of conditioning that takes place. There's a lot of learning that takes place. And there are, what I see it as is that the things are going wrong on two fronts. There are things that we need that we don't receive, and there are things that we shouldn't receive and that we receive. So on the things that we shouldn't receive that we receive is something that at some point of time becomes pretty obvious. Like if you look at it culturally, we are told about our role as a woman, or we are told like if you don't get into a college, you're not going to be successful in life. And these are things that we are realizing are actually not true. The society or culture has promoted this whole cycle of, if you want money, then you're greedy. And all of these are things that we absorb from the culture at a very subconscious level. We are actually not very aware of the conditioning that we receive from the culture. Whatever perpetuates, or whatever, the survival of the fittest. I think that is one of the myths. Like, we had to do better than others in school because then we can get better jobs, then we have a better outcome to life. But that's not really the truth. I don't know if
This
I mean
is where the importance of nature versus nurture comes in, right? And parents and teachers play a really, really important part in this.
nature versus Sheetal, can somebody check if we are live on Facebook? I'm still getting messages saying that people cannot find us on Facebook. So in parallelly, if somebody from the team can check on that.
Um, if you could just tell them we are live, maybe they just need to go to the Zyvik page and scroll down to the video. They may not see it right on top because you
Okay,
can't link to the video directly, you can link to the page. So
okay.
they need to scroll down.
So we'll continue with the question that you were asking. The nature versus nurture debate has been huge in the scientific community, for the very fact that even twins born in the same house with the same genetic material are never going to be the same. Even if their life circumstances are more or less the same. But it comes down to, if you look at it not as a nature versus nurture debate, if you look at the fact that genes are 95% controlled by the environment, they say even the shape of the brain of a person can reveal so much about our personality, about our mental health conditions. And they say this shaping of the brain is actually happening in childhood. So childhood, between the age of 0 to 7, the years that we actually don't remember anything about, is when our brain becomes about the size of 90% of size of an adult. And this isn't just the increase in size. We are forming neural connections in our brain at that point of time. Everything that we see around us is actually being absorbed, and nature did this for a very good reason, because you must have seen, like, a giraffe baby is born and the next day it can walk. Humans take the longest time in terms to sort of match up to where we are capable and functioning as functional members in the society. So the brain waves of a child are actually in theta state. To give a little backdrop, you and me are in beta state of brain wave right now. When we meditate, we go into an alpha state. Theta state is what you experience in hypnosis. So if a child is walking around between the ages of 0 to 5, primarily in theta state of brain wave, they are absorbing everything that they see around them, which they have no memory of, and storing it in what is called as the subconscious mind, which we have zero awareness of. And it's very popular now. You must have heard of it, that 95% of our actions are actually driven from the subconscious. And it's pretty crazy to think that we know nothing about this. So, like I was saying, there's the part that we get, that which probably shouldn't be received, which is the cultural conditioning, which is familial conditioning. We see the roles that our mothers are playing, that our fathers are playing, and if there is a dynamic that is not going on, in the right way, even that is absorbed in the child as it is. The child's mind is continually absorbing these things. And then if you look at things that we need that we don't receive, is we need safety, we need love, we need belongingness in a very broad general way. We need to feel a sense of pride, we need parents who praise us. And all of these things are things that we don't receive. So we don't receive the food that allows us to remain in our authenticity. The food that allows us to remain in our authenticity is primarily unconditional love. And if you think about it, I'm pretty doubtful if you know any of us have received unconditional love, because love in our households has followed if this and then that format. if you do this, if you're a good child, if you get
Yeah.
good grades, if you behave
It's
yourself,
very
you're done.
conditional. It's very conditional, whereas it's supposed to be unconditional. I've always maintained, I think for the last 20 years, I've been saying this to all my friends or anybody who will listen to me, that once people are married, doesn't make them automatic parents. Actually, nobody is an automatic parent.
No.
Okay. And I think once they're married, just like you get a marriage certificate, there should be an evaluation process to see if the two of them together are going to be good parents or not. Because individually, you're different. As an individual, you might be a great single mother, but in combination with the man you are with or your partner, you may not provide the ideal setup as for a child. So I think that evaluation process should actually become mandatory, because I think a lot of the messed up people in the world today are because of this stage of life. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it has a whole lot to do with how we turn out to be, our insecurities, our, all of that comes from this space.
We are learning. So in that age of 0 to 7, we learn language skills, of course, but we are learning everything about how way the world works. We are learning how relationships work. We look at how our primary attachment styles come from, looking at the dynamics in the family. How are emotions addressed in your family, or in most of the families? I don't think we have had a culture which promotes addressing of emotions, because we are seen as children and we are seen as, okay, child is crying, usko chup kar. You know, we are sort of raised in a way to not address. And anytime something was stressful or painful, the way of addressing, especially in the Indian culture, I think is very much like avoidance.
Yeah,
There is
yeah,
a lot of avoidance strategy that happens,
so true.
because we are basically not, when we are away from authenticity, we are away from our power. We are constantly in a state of people pleasing and validation seeking. So we kind of stay in a shell of operating within this zone of safety of what we think we can operate within. Now, this zone of this happens actually in childhood. We don't reach as adults. As adults, we start to figure out sometimes that what's happened in childhood was probably not the best food that we ate mentally for our mind. But a lot of what's happening in childhood is we are seeing stuff that are relationship patterns, the emotional handling patterns, not receiving unconditional love is very big. And we talk about safety. I don't think we have felt safe as a child. We talk about self shelter and safety as a primary need. If you look at what's the Maslow's need of hierarchy of the human need, we a lot of households have raised children in spare the rod, spoil the child format. A lot of kids have been what would classify today, like in the West, they would put parents in jail if you think of, and
Yeah.
it's not without a reason. Those instances of abuse are actually shaping a child's brain physically, like, and it's not like any kind of abuse or any kind of trauma that the child suffers is literally shaping the brain of the child. So what are we not giving them is, of course, if we don't give them unconditional love, they become people pleasers in adulthood. It's not an option that we have that we can turn off. So we are constantly betraying our boundaries, betraying our needs as adults. If we are betraying our boundaries, betraying our needs, we are in a constant level betraying who we are. We are never in our authenticity. We have basically learned to give our power away at a very young age, because for us to be authentic, we needed to believe that we would be loved no matter what. And
this
it
this
was
this just brings me to my next question. So if we have to understand that we have layers of conditioning and experiences that have created who I think I am or who we think we are, how do we really know who we really are then?
so
Because if I don't remember what I was in my theta state in that little for 1 to 6 years, that's my true self. How am I going to figure out who I am, and how do I remove these layers of conditioning?
first of all, I think being aware of what's missing. Like when you see a child in their authentic expression, the child doesn't care if people are looking at him dancing or not. He is not bothered about the shape of his nose. We create that concern for the child. The child is imitating. When we see our looks and we are bothered about our look, the child feels like, okay, this is something they need to be concerned about too. So if you see a child in that age of 2 or 3, where their exposure has to the conditioning and to everything is little lesser, they are free, they are totally themselves, they are not feeling that, okay, my stomach is coming out and my arms are looking flabby. All of these fears don't exist for a child. They are in that pure state of joy. They love themselves. Children are born loving themselves. You take a child and you get them to do something they don't want to do, they will throw a tantrum. What do we do as parents when they throw a tantrum? Through coercion, we get them to do what we want as parents by teaching them that no, my way is the right way, instead of trying to listen to the child and seeing if, I have negotiation that I do with my 3-year-old. So instead of trying to negotiate, what we are trying to do is coerce that child. So the question of who we are truly is actually so complex, because I mean, I'm actually a little bit of a science nerd. So I like to think of it from the space of evolution. If you think about it, we were actually we have evolved from single cellular beings into multicellular beings, where all of our cells have differentiated. And if you think about it in that way, then our brains, which is the part that gets programmed and has a certain output, like any other organ in the body. So if we think, if our thoughts, our emotional reactions to a certain thing, what you react to, Sheetal, I will not react the same
True,
way,
true. Yeah.
or because those are your underlying conditions which make you feel about a certain topic. Even if it's about animal welfare, or even if it's about the food you eat, we are not going to feel anything about anything in our life, any situation that happens. Two people will never respond to it the same, because they are filtering it through that condition. They're filtering it through the mental programming. So if we have to look who we are, then our brain and our mental filtering and our programming is actually sort of like the CPU of the device. Then who we are in our true self is actually every single cell of us is us. We are a consciousness that's residing in millions of cells that's constituting a body. And when you think about it, this outlook for me is very empowering, because it gives you a space where you can challenge your thoughts. A lot of times our negative thoughts, our negative beliefs are residing in our mind. And if our thoughts were all good, you would never hear, we would be able to change our behavior. We would be able to be happy, you know, internally. Internal happiness wouldn't be a challenge. But the place where a lot of our confusion, a lot of challenges come is from our mind. So we would be able to step outside of the mind. We are basically a consciousness that's residing in every single cell in our body. And the way spirituality talks about this is quite interesting, through the concept of higher self. But I mean, if you don't like the spiritual aspect of it, just think about this. When you think, you can think what you are thinking about. And just the act that you can think what you're thinking about
That
means that
sounded like a tongue twister. Can you repeat that?
when you think, you can think what you're thinking about. I am thinking about this, then who am I who's thinking about that thought? You are an observer who has the power to change who you are, to be in search for that authentic version of you, to find the things that truly matter to you, to actually look at your emotional reactions and see where they're coming from, to actually look at your behavior from this third person perspective of, why do I feel about certain things a certain way? Why can't I speak my truth? Why can't I stand in my power? And I think this is so wonderfully, like, especially when we talk about women in India, have this need to constantly be the person who's sacrificing their needs for the rest of the members of the family, because they're told that's good. So they even learn to feel pleasure in the act of sacrificing their needs. Eventually, the thing is, if you're not in alignment with who you are, and if you're doing this through sacrificing and people pleasing, your body is going to give way, because your mind and body are so interlinked. You are actually, we have this belief that we are a mind and body. So, first of all, your mind, body, plus higher self observer, soul self, whatever you want to call it, the part of you that has the power to observe back and say, you know what, I have thought about this enough. I don't want to think about this. Who is taking that decision? If you get a thought, and if I get a thought and you choose to act on it and I choose not to, there is somebody who is more powerful than our mind already with us. And it is at that level of awareness that we can start looking into ourselves and seeing, okay, I do this, but is this resonating with who I am? Start on a journey of introspection. And I think it comes from realizing that we are beyond a mind.
For me, it's very interesting. I'm somebody who questions everything. So when spirituality is backed by science, it makes a whole lot more sense and you connect better with it, which is why when you and me were speaking, it connected. I can't just listen to a yogi talk in these big words and the jargon, and then there's no scientific if we don't find that authentic self, if we don't go back to being true to our own selves, if we don't remove all these layers of conditioning, there's no way we are going to be totally happy, anyways. Right?
Not only are we going to be unhappy, our body and mind is hardwired.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
are showing nowadays. I mean, if you see the diseases that are linked with mind, I think our modern medicine really needs to look back into how we are treating people. How,
It's all
it,
psychosomatic. It's
it,
all
it,
psychosomatic today.
it's
Yeah.
it's it's symptom based treatment that we're doing without realizing that 80 to 90% of the health conditions that we even the conditions that we call genetic are actually in control of the environment. Everything that a lot of the forget about mental health being in charge of your situations and trauma and conditioning. They're showing links between everything. You take chronic chronic stress can offshoot in so many diseases,
Today, the
in
number one disease.
diabetes, everything. I mean, there is cancer. There's link between cancer and
So
suppressed emotions and anger, and
so
there
the
is
doctors are saying today that your number one killer is not a disease that you're used to, it's stress.
yeah,
So, you can be genetically, you might be having a lot of diseases lying dormant in you, but it's the stress of the environment and the stress you put on yourself because you're not being true to yourself that is triggering everything inside you. Which brings me to triggers. We all have triggers, people, things, words, emotions, memories. It's like a labyrinth of a mess of the triggers we all have. What's I have a question also from somebody who says, what's an easy mantra to rediscover yourself? Anurag, there's no easy mantra, I think, because
we go
it's
back to
years
that
of
question
conditioning.
again.
So Tamanna is going to tell us about triggers, and maybe one quick way to control a trigger would probably help you in this discovery.
Trigger is when we have an emotional blowout, a reaction, and then you're like, why did it bother me so much? Why did this get to me so much? And sometimes you might not even have that thought because we are so capable at holding other people responsible for our emotions and what we feel
True.
that we don't realize that very often there's an underlying emotion that allows us to get triggered. Because, like I said, what makes you feel a certain way is not something that's going to make anybody else feel the same way it makes you feel. So our
True.
triggers are actually such a great tool to learn to start this journey of self introspection because what triggers you are unhealed wounds. And today's psychology is redefining what trauma means because trauma is not just sort of experiencing abuse or if you come from a family that has experienced divorce, it's a trauma. If you come if your
Sorry,
parents are
Tamanna, you're not very clear right now. Can you
okay,
repeat what you just said?
we are there is a whole redefinition of what trauma actually means. They are saying that it's not just experiencing some kind of abuse that we would connect to as trauma. Having parents who invalidated your emotions, having parents who didn't support you when you were going through maybe an abuse or some kind of a tough challenge of your own time itself is traumatic. So all of these unhealed wounds have created issues in all of us, and how we react to a situation has a lot to do with these underlying unhealed stuff. And I think traumas are a great way to start this journey into discovery of the inner self, as well as along with sort of healing aspects of what we can look into it. Is if your friend didn't answer your call, the way you think about it actually reveals a lot about what is an underlying issue within you. If you think, oh my God, they probably found new friends and I'm not needed or I'm not enough, it is creating a trigger within you. How do you feel if your boss fires you? Has a lot to every time life is not going according to your plan, what you feel is revealing everything that is hidden content of your subconscious mind or your triggers. And how do people react in the same situation is never the same. So I love the example of if you don't answer my call and if I think you're dead, says a lot about my anxiety and my stress levels, which I've not been able to manage.
True.
My mind is something that generally catastrophizes. If somebody else says that, my God, they don't want to be friends with me anymore, or they are ignoring me on purpose. It shows a lack of self-worth. So your triggers are actually such a great place to recognize that there's some healing that needs to take place. Like if you blow up or if you have anger uh, at that drop of a hat, it shows that fear is the basis of anger. Anger is actually a cover-up emotion for usually fear. So where is that childhood fear that was unresolved? And if that unresolved fear continues to lie there, and we have like the biggest triggers are feelings of I am not enough, and we all feel that we were not made to feel enough. The other big one is this is this lack of self worth that we all have. I think it's huge. It's huge. I would say 95% of us or 99% of us have that. The other is feelings of helplessness. And if you even if you experience secondary abuse, that is, if you saw somebody else, like if your parents shared a dynamic where you know they were they were hitting each other, or your father was hitting the mother, just that experience of secondary abuse can trigger feelings of helplessness that stays with you for your life. And the feeling of unlovability, that I'm not loved. And again, that comes back to the unconditional loving that we receive, and what we need is unconditional loving. And all of these are actually, they say, these are belief systems. I don't look at this as belief system, because these are emotions that are residing deep within. So when somebody doesn't answer your call, your feeling of I am not loved, I am not enough, or there is something that must have happened wrong to them, everything is actually a great teacher. Your triggers are your biggest teacher. Everything that triggers you is here to teach you something that you were not able to resolve of by yourself as a child. And the reason why we cannot resolve of it at a certain age is because the part of our brain, that is the prefrontal cortex, that is the decision making, emotional regulation skills, has not kicked in till we are actually pretty late into adulthood. It starts maturing at the age of 10 and continues to mature in your early 20s. So everything that you experienced sort of affects you. And I can share a personal example from my life. Like I remember this moment when uh, my dad spoke about exaggerated my grades to his colleagues, and I could overhear that conversation, and that triggered such feelings of I am not enough. Otherwise, he wouldn't be lying, because to a child's mind, lying is something that's bad. So I was like, he's lying because he's not happy with me. I am not enough for him, and that those feelings continue to reside within me as an adult. So when I become an adult, it offshooted in me as something that led me wanting to be a perfectionist in whatever I did. I never felt free to explore my creativity or to do things that I was deeply called for, because I felt like somebody had to validate me, somebody had to praise me, or the because I didn't receive praise growing up. Actually, I didn't receive a lot of praise from my father, because it was, I think it was in a time that it was also seen. It is not their fault primarily, because they didn't know that this is something that a child needs. It was thought
Yeah.
that if
Yeah.
you praise a child, it will go to their head.
Yeah. Yeah.
So children
They'll
were
stop
not.
trying harder. If you praise them for what they've done, they'll stop trying harder. That was the mentality.
Yes, if you want to push them,
Yeah.
so we were raised in constant cycles of disappointment, actually. And
Yeah.
if you feel disappointed in yourself as an adult today, it is not you. It is the inner parent that still resides within you that is still disappointed. So I think working on triggers is the great place to start your journey of self-awareness, because when you're triggered, it's very hard to control your emotional reaction. But if you're able to go back and be like, okay, this is the situation that happened. Why did it trigger? Why did why did an ex person saying such a small thing? Why was I not able to manage my emotions? Why did I break down? Why did I why did I have an anger outburst at that situation? And if
So
we think that
I've started doing that a lot because I know I have a lot of triggers, and I get, triggered really easily with some people and some things. And I think I was going to come to this point a little later in the conversation, but since we've brought this up now, what has worked for me with dealing with that trigger is to immediately write about it. Because at that moment, that anger, that everything, I'm putting it down so that I can read over it and see what was it in that whole situation that bothered me that much.
I think also
So
separating the other from the situation, because
yeah,
we have to realize that if another can just continue to make you feel, if other people have the remote control to your emotions, then you will keep blaming the other person for your emotional reaction.
true.
If you remove the other person and you need to completely turn inward,
Yeah,
what was actually bothering me about this situation? If I remove the other person from this equation, why was this a trigger to me? And I think the ability to sit down immediately afterwards usually takes a little time. But if journaling as a habit is, if somebody is journaling, then taking that time to reflect back when you have cooled down. But eventually, the idea is when you feel triggered and you see that rise up, you should be able to take a breath, pause for a second, track your emotions, and do that space of introspection without blowing up at all.
yeah,
And I think that's the place that you want to reach at, because a trigger, I don't think where it completely goes away. Things that trigger you till you find out. At least for me,
yeah, yeah,
till I find why they are a trigger.
yeah,
Till
yeah.
I go back to that specific memory in my childhood, and till it comes up with something that that to me at that point of time, my children's mind as a meaning
Yeah.
making machine. They join the dots.
And sometimes it takes so long, Tamanna, to discover it because we have put so many layers over it to bury it. To reach that emotional deficit that has created that trigger might take some time. It's not like a quick fix. It takes a lot of introspection, a lot of, like you said, third party viewing of your own emotions and the triggers to get to that point, because we buried it so deep with
I
so
think
many
being
years.
able to operate from self compassion at that
Yeah,
stage,
yeah,
because if you're going to judge your own anger outbursts or be like, why am I crying for this small
yeah.
issue? Because you are
We
already
are
creating.
our worst critics. We are our worst critics. We are harshest to ourselves,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
And
So
actually, if you are critical of others, I think that if somebody is critical of somebody else, then I really wonder what are they doing to
yeah,
themselves.
yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
if we are able to be critical of other people, then we have to be truly unhappy
So
with.
someone told me what you're seeing in the other person is probably what is in you. It's reflecting you. It's a mirror image. So if you're being critical of the other person, you're equally critical of yourself, or more so for yourself. So think about that.
Actually, when we start this journey of self awareness beyond triggers, and I love this Carl Jung quote. Actually, I'm a big fan of Carl Jung.
Me too.
He said, he said, "What irritates you about another person tells you a lot about yourself."
Yeah, exactly.
Whether it's so when you judge somebody for lying is not good, but it teaches you that you're judging. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you are a liar is why you're getting triggered, but if it's irritating you, it's because you're holding judgment, and it's still teaching you. So everything that actually irritates you about another person are things that you need to work on yourself, and that's
True.
actually said very
There's another line that really resonated with me when I was taking some counseling and stuff for different things. I went in for body work and a lot of things. I love all this alternative things, works better for me than I think the streamlined allopathic works for me. And somebody told me that the only thing you can change is yourself, and the minute you change yourself, the reactions of other people to you have to change, which means the environment and the other person changes. But you can't change the other person. You can
yeah.
only change yourself. So that was something that was that was a wow moment for me, because I was in the process of correcting the other person ki aise this is galat, but I had to change my reaction to that person and my perceptions to change my reaction to that person. And the minute my reaction stopped, my that that thing I was giving them, that little ego boost or what, by getting into that space with them, stopped. So automatically that whole thing changed. So I think these are small things that nobody tells us about growing up, right? It's like, acha react kiya, acha gussa kar lo, acha ho gaya, now I don't care what you're saying. It's like you said, invalidation of your emotions.
invalidation Invalidating of our emotions on all different levels,
Yeah,
from being a child. You're too emotional. We have heard this. You're too emotional. Children are emotionally sensitive. They are not born. They are born with their emotions on their sleeves, and that's the right way, because they need to navigate the world till till their logic brain parts coming online. They need emotions to navigate the world. They need to know
Yeah.
that that's going to be scary. But all of this invalidation, like you said, and I think you captured some essence of it very beautifully, because we can never change whatever is outside of us. Wanting to control or change the circumstance of the situation of people on the outside creates more and more. Actually, that's what creates pain and internal suffering a lot of times. Because if we were okay with the way people who are in our lives, we would actually be in a happier space ourselves.
Yeah.
Not only do we trouble them with this, we are also troubling
True,
ourselves.
true, true, true.
So,
So I've
yeah.
heard you talk about the shield concept a few once, I think, and it was fascinating, which made me read up more about it. So I think you should definitely talk about that today because I think it's a fascinating concept.
So the shield concept actually ties very beautifully to the idea that we are a consciousness that resides within all of us. And since you said you like a little bit of science geek side of mine, uh, have you heard of this phenomena called cellular memory transference? It
Yes, I have.
when
I have.
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting, because when you transfer an organ to another person, you just don't transfer the organ. They actually get the the donor's personality, parts of their personality. Things like somebody who has always loathed fried chicken suddenly starts liking fried chicken. But parts of their personality is also something that you get in that process. You just don't get an organ. There's a heart transfer case that is so interesting for me to read up on, which is about this 10-year-old girl she received the heart of an 8-year-old who was murdered, and she was able to narrate back the instance of this situation so clearly that when they confronted the person who was the murderer with it, he just gave up, because he didn't know what happened. Like, he was so scared of the situation. It actually led to the criminal being caught. So the cases of it are beyond belief, and I think all of this is so interesting, because then it shows us that we are beyond our minds, that we are our bodies. 80% of the neurotransmitters of happiness are produced in our gut. Our guts are lined by neurons, the same similar ones that we have in our brain. So does our heart. And what we have to do is take care of ourselves as a system. So when I heard this first, I was listening to this interview of Dr. Rudy Tanzi. He has written a book on Alzheimer's.
Your sound is going in and out again, Tamanna.
Thanks for pointing that out. So I first heard of the shield concept from Dr. Rudy Tanzi. I was listening into one of his interviews, and he has written a book on Alzheimer's. And it's so succinctly put, because when we understand that we are beyond our minds, that we are our bodies, and we need to integrate aspects of ourselves, and if we don't take care of ourselves as a system, we are actually creating a toxic atmosphere for our brain, for our emotions, for how we feel. So the shield concept is basically an acronym that stands for S for sleep, and sleep is so very important for our bodies, so very important for, if you're not sleeping well, it's one of the first indications that you're stressed out, that you're carrying stress. um, H is for handling stress, for in the shield acronym, and handling stress is something that's again very important. A lot of times our current stressors are not what is in our present environment, but how we have not learned to deal with some of the past suppressed emotions. So our stress management is nothing. If you think my life is not stressful and I shouldn't be stressed, the stress that you're carrying, you're always carrying stress of your whole life, which is in your body, which is how health problems come up. So meditation is a great tool for handling stress. Being mindful, mindfulness as a meditative practice, but you can practice being mindful with every single activity, including eating, or even if you're reading or watching something. Being able to be absorbed in that state without having your mind running around anywhere is a state of mindfulness, which is great. It's shown a lot of connection with being stress free. I is in Shield acronym. The I stands for being interactions. Our interactions as with others, and we are a social being. So I think that goes without saying. And our interactions and need for our love is actually so much that in orphanages it's been observed that if a child is not touched physically, the child the mortality rate for the child is 30 to 40% higher, just physical touch, because
Wow.
we as a system were not designed to survive by ourselves. We are as a system are designed to evolve and survive. If a human was outcasted from his tribe, they wouldn't be able to survive. So that need is actually very deep within us. The reason why we people please, and we need so much of the external to fill those voids, sorry for that sound, when we have, especially when we have those gaps, is because as a society we have a need to be social, to be accepted, to feel loved. And if we have that as children, then we can own that power and come into our adult relationships completely ourselves. And if we don't receive it as children, then we kind of give our power away and do things that we think others want from us. And sometimes it's not even what others truly want. We feel like they want us to connect. We feel like if we do this, they're going to give us more love. It's because
Right.
we feel that. So coming back to the shield concept, SHI is for interaction, E is for exercise. You have to take care of your whole body and for the body mind system. L is for learning. Learning is very important for the brain, for your emotions, not just for preventing diseases like Alzheimer's or something in your old age. Our neural connections need refreshment. We need to learn. A lot of times when you look back at your childhood, and I think this point comes in every time when we look back, when we are going through something, like if we're going through a very bad phase in our life, we look back at our childhood for where did we lose ourselves. If you look back, there were certain practices that were keeping us in this state of health. We had certain exercises that we had to do physically, whether we were dancing. We had to learn new things. So learning is very important to stay mentally resilient and strong as well, because it's like taking the old food out of your fridge. You need to refresh your brain connection. Your brain keeps producing new neurons. And to tap into that, if you're not learning, it's like letting your brain stay up. And the B is your diet, and that's where the neurotransmitters that are produced in your gut are so important. Neurotransmitters for happiness, whether it's your GABA or serotonin, 80% of them are being produced in the gut. So mental health is so linked with your physical health, so linked with your gut health, that if we don't look into taking care of ourselves as a system, it actually backfires. And I would like to address something here, which goes totally unaddressed in mainstream, is when we have every time we face some kind of trauma as a child, we dissociate first with our bodies. The first place that we dissociate from is our physical being. We stop as adults, when we don't walk, when we don't exercise, we are not strengthening that connection. When we are not treating our body right, how you treat yourself is actually a very strong reflection of how you felt treated as a child, how you're treating your physical body today. So I think taking those aspects in mind, it may not always be easy to take care of, especially if you didn't feel taken care of as a child. But when you are an adult, the responsibility that you hold towards yourself is actually quite important. It's an overall, you have to look at yourself holistically.
So if we want to connect back to us, our authentic self, it's meditation, journaling, anything else you want to add to that whole process?
So we have meditation, we have journaling. To realize that who you are is beyond your mind, beyond what your thoughts are telling you, because you can choose. There's a part of you that's making the choice to not go with them, that's making the choice to stop the thinking. So the more you connect in meditation, people think it's about the act of disconnecting from your thoughts. A regular meditator may be able to reach that space of disconnection, but more often than not, our brain is not designed to stop thinking. Even in sleep, we dream. So if we can understand that meditation is actually designed to know that your thoughts don't control you. The act of just sitting down with your thoughts and being able to tell your mind, calm down, is you taking charge from your inner self perspective, gaining self awareness, looking back at a situation and what you feel emotionally and be like, why did I feel this way? So the finding out of the why actually leads you to discover who you are internally, and that's again very important. Journaling is a great habit, and you need not even journal daily. But when you do journal, don't make it a sob journal. Don't make it a place where you write down all your pain, because one day you might want to go back and look at it. And if you don't write things that you're grateful for today, it is a direct reflection of the negativity bias that you all inherently are born with. We have a negativity bias within us.
True.
So make your journal a space that you note down even the things that you're grateful and happy for. Things that you had an intuition, had an idea. Write down about the positive too. Don't go and just keep that space.
So combine it with a gratitude journal also.
You can have a separate gratitude journal as well, but people. I mean, for people who are starting out, it might just feel like too much.
No, I'm saying make this diary or wherever you're journaling also your gratitude journal, where you're also thanking, being grateful for what is going right in your life, right?
And that's actually quite important. Sheetal. I
it's
feel
it's so
like
important to bring that balance in, because nobody's life is only miserable. So
they
we
say
need
for
to,
everything bad, we have 5 good things that happen.
yeah,
But our mind is so focused on the bad that we
yes,
forget
true,
anything,
true,
even in other people, not just in our life and what we feel, but in other people.
yeah.
And finding that reconnection with ourselves comes in looking back at our childhood. What were the things that mattered? So one of the things that we have as child is this unlimited imagination and the belief that we can be whoever we want. What
Can't
was
hear you again, can't hear you again.
one of the things that we have as children is this belief in ourselves that we can be whoever we want to be. And adulting changes that for us. We start feeling limited. We start facing, when we go through hard falls, when we have financial crunches, we start realizing life is not the dream fairy tale. That giving up of that belief is actually a very strong sense of disconnection, because that belief that everything is possible when you set your mind to it is actually a source of inner confidence. It's a source of self-efficacy, that belief that I am going to be fine and I'm going to be able to make it through, or I can become the president. You believe in those things.
Yeah, yeah, as a child you ask a child what they want to be, every few months it's something different.
And their dreams are
There's no basis. I want to be a pilot, an astronaut, a doctor. It's all in the same year.
our glass
It's
ceiling
amazing.
comes from the belief that think I cannot something else. That's the glass ceiling that we have placed
Yeah.
above our own minds, which the society or the culture has placed for us. It's something that we didn't learn how. So feeling free to dream, I think, is one of them. But going back to your childhood and remembering what was the thing that was important for you and that brought you joy. So if coloring brought you joy, and again here parenting in all due respect, especially with Indian parenting, we they feel like, oh, बेटा खेल के क्या करोगे स्पोर्ट्स में तुम्हें कहाँ पे कोटा मिलेगा you're not going to go anywhere if you're going to but that sports brought the child in a joy by constantly saying that you are you need to be something other than an artist and other than other than a sports person and other than do things
because
that
we
bring you joy.
because we are conditioned to equate success with money, right?
Success with money and success with things that like
Materialistic stuff.
engineering, doctor,
Yeah,
civil engineer, all
yeah.
of these things you need to give you need to give all these
But
entrances.
I strongly believe if you follow your passion and if you're doing something with passion, you're going to put in 200%. And there's no way that kind of effort doesn't bring in its rewards.
And I think that's what a child needs, that
Yeah,
nurturing of that creative side
yeah.
that they are already born with. So when
True.
we have shut out our creativity, and I think about this, even if you look back at, I mean, I think everything is integrated. If you look back at spirituality, your creativity is lying in your sacral chakra, which is also the center for your emotional balance. If you're not creatively free to express yourself, you're also not going to be emotionally free to express yourself. And if you think you're not able to find joy in life, are you creative? Ask yourself that question. Like, are you letting free of a creative side to yourself? And people say time nahi hai. They have all these limitations and restrictions and excuses that we have built for ourselves. When things matter to you, you take our time with them.
Yeah,
You
true.
always do.
I
So
think as parents, I think it's very important to teach your child that it's okay to say no. It's okay to have boundaries. I think I had the biggest problem learning to say no in my adulthood, because we are in that please everybody mode right from childhood. You have to please your parents, please your grandparents, please your teachers, please your friends, peer pressure. All of that adds up to a point where a lot of people I know face an issue saying no, कि नहीं मुझे
I
नहीं
actually
करना.
made a post about this, Sheetal, and I think it's so important because then we don't know when to say no.
Yeah,
When we are when because our parents want us as agreeable little minions,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
who are agreeing with them, who are following their direction.
yeah.
We let go of our authenticity, our authentic voice, but along with that, we are letting go of a lot of us when we don't know when to say no. So I actually put it up in my story last night, I think, where I said the greatest thing that I'm teaching my son, and I teach him so many ABC, everything, right? Is that he is in charge of how he lets other people treat him, touch him, and how they talk to him. And
But I
I've
think
told
there
him,
is
I
focusing
need
on.
to like this express. If I shout at him, and if he tells me I did not like it, I say I'm sorry. But if I keep shouting at him today, tomorrow when somebody else does that, whether it's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
friend, whether it's in a relationship, he will
I
think that
think
he deserves
I
it
think
because he is
open
quiet.
communication, open logical communication to a child कि क्यों no, why your no is not acceptable is very needed. It can't just be a blanket statement that you can't say no. And we
Yes.
teach children boundaries about good touch, bad touch, but what about emotionally?
I just had a conversation with my mom about this. It's not about good touch, bad touch. It's my
Yeah,
body. I don't want you to pick me up. Please don't pick me up.
yeah,
That's what you need. Like good touch,
yes,
bad touch is at the next level.
yes,
But at the first level is primary, knowing that this is your body. And if you and how I teach that to my child is by seeking his permission when I'm bathing him. I seek his permission. He's 3 year old, but ever since he was even younger, I have seeked his permission before I wash him to let him know that if I'm to touch you, I have to seek your permission. So when if something happens and if somebody is touching him in a way that he's not comfortable with, he should be able to say that you don't do this.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
that knowledge doesn't come from being being taught good
True,
touch
very
bad
true,
touch alone. It
very
comes
true.
from being known that you can stand up for yourself and stand up for whatever you think is right or wrong, your truth. You should be able to stand up to that. You don't want to be spoken to a certain way, you can say that, please.
Yes,
I think,
yes.
letting go of which I think, and that's where self-love comes in this discovery of finding who you truly are. When we have not received that unconditional loving that we needed as children, what we need primarily as adults is to be able to give ourselves self-love. And for me, this journey actually started with my child. When I was pregnant, I noticed that I was, taking care of myself, eating right, working out, and nobody needed to prompt me. I didn't need to be hard on myself. Everything was coming naturally because I was doing it for him. So I think somewhere when he was around a year old, and at that point of time, in all the hectic parenting and sleepless nights, and I had let go of myself to a certain degree, I was like, wait a second, why is my diet important when I'm pregnant? Why am I watching out what he eats? Why am I watching out like the amount of concern that I had for him eating balanced meal and organic and putting in the right foods and massaging his body for his good growth? Why didn't I need that love? And through that, through being able to love him so more than myself, I realized that I needed that love for me, which I
Correct.
had to give myself. So self love is very important, and I think it's a
And,
very
and it's not to be
underrated word.
mistaken. Self love is not to be mistaken with selfishness. It's very,
Yes.
very different.
And I think that's a fear maybe that our parents had, that self love is not very good at some level, that it was not very promoted as a concept. Self love is you taking care of your body, taking care of your mind.
True.
Self love is you drawing boundaries. Self love is you being able to say no to things that you know are not good for you, for yourself, like saying no to that drink when you know you've had to and you don't want to wake up with a hangover. Self love is, I know it's not good for my body. That is self love. If you're not able to break free out of your habits, whatever bad habit it is, I mean, if it's a
Yeah.
drug addiction or if it's cigarette or if it's drinking, if you're not able to break free out of that habit, it comes from a lack of self love. Because if
True.
you truly
True.
loved yourself, you would care about
True.
what your lungs look on the inside, or what alcohol or what anything, any harmful substance is doing to you on the inside. So working with self love as a concept, like how would you talk to somebody you love? You wouldn't beat them down. But then when you tell yourself, I am not good enough, it is an all encompassing concept in how you speak to yourself.
True. Very true.
Asking yourself when you take an action and you're, especially if you're operating, if you're somebody who people pleases, what would somebody who loves themselves do? Would they say yes to this? Would they, would already being under work pressure, would they agree to take another work assignment on top? They would say no. So what would someone who loves themselves do?
Yeah.
Starting from taking care of your body, I think is a very, very important step, and taking time out to spend with yourself. You love, and here is, I mean, 65% of people would rather give themselves electric shock than spend time with themselves. This is an actual study. 65% of people, out of which two-thirds were men and one-fourth were women, would
Wow.
actually give themselves a mild electric shock than be alone in a room by themselves. We say we want to be by ourselves. What we mean is we want to disconnect and distract ourselves from our emotions,
There's books,
through
there's phones, there's
devices,
TV. Yeah.
Netflix. We don't want to be alone with our
Yeah.
thoughts. You're not willing to spend, if you love somebody, you would want to spend time with them. You want to get to know them. You would want to be like, I see you're feeling upset. You want to talk about it. If you cannot do that for yourself, whether
Yeah.
it's through journaling or just having just just being able to introspect in your own mind, just having a self-talk, then those to me are acts of self-love. And I think lastly, when we talk about finding out about ourselves, one of the great and it's not much spoken about practice is finding out your true values. And values are something that we develop in experience to the good and bad in our life, but they are so deeply connected with stepping into our authenticity. So I think maybe if
Let's do
people
one
are
little exercise. I want you to end with a little exercise, which
we
is
can
going
do this
to
exercise.
one small little thing that we can take home with us. But before that, I have one question from Bia who says, "I'm always my id states my id takes over.
That is that talking about
ID,
ID.
ego id, yeah,
So id state is your you have three states. That's the id, ego, and super ego. So id state is primarily the childlike state, which is more reactive or more like giving into impulses. Not having self control comes from the id state. So being able to look at yourself and finding out what is driving them, because very often what you're denied is are things that you are driven towards as well, what you lack. So if you didn't get unconditional love is you're gonna your adult life is gonna be all about relationships. If you were abandoned, in contrast to not being given love, your relationships are going to be filled with fear and abandonment. So I think recognizing finding hard to control can actually reveal a lot more. So I have a challenge personally, and that is when I'm stressed, I binge scroll Instagram. Guilty. So I noticed that every time I'm stressed, I tend to pick up my Instagram and I will go down that rabbit hole for half an hour, 45 minutes. And then I'll be like, and then I'll feel guilty about it. And so starts the cycle. But being able to notice that pattern itself creates a break of chain. After 5 minutes into it, a part of me is like, do you really want to do this? Or do you want to listen to that talk that you've been, that talk by Gavon, my mate, the guy you idealize him, go and listen to him, or something you go and listen to something that you have saved on your instead of doing mindless scrolling, do use your phone if that's what you want towards releasing your stress. So not trying to fight it, don't try to fight with your it because it is your suppression. It is what was suppressed that's trying to come out. But working with it and practicing awareness on it, because awareness, I think, is the first step to creating a distance and being able to see yourself. Like I see myself when I'm scrolling, and that awareness steps in. But if you operate from a place of guilt and suppression and being like, but I should not let that part of myself come out, it is not going to do well. When you don't acknowledge why it
yeah,
exists in the
yeah.
first
I think very important to be mindfully aware, and then you can start making changes. Because if you don't recognize something, there's no way to change it, right?
place.
So until you recognize, and that will only come with mindful awareness of
We all
yourself.
actually have patterns that keep us in disconnection from our emotions, Sheila.
Yes.
Uh, whether it's keeping ourselves busy, and people might think that's, I mean, what's wrong with keeping ourselves busy? If you're somebody who's perpetually keeping yourself busy, I guarantee you there's underlying anxiety there, because I have had that problem. I
I
had
have to.
underlying
I have
anxiety.
to. Yeah.
Yes, you workaholism fits in very perfectly in that dynamic. So it is a constructive way of dealing with your anxiety in some books. But are you doing good to your body? Because eventually your body will protest. And we might think like people, if you're working out and if you're working out for an hour versus working out for 4 hours, that says a lot, because you don't need to work out for 4 hours if you're not trained. And
All
if
these
you have that,
phrases, stretching yourself too thin, that's where all these things come in, where you're just really
what is
stretching
the
yourself
tweak
so you
that
don't have to deal with the actual difficult issues in life, right? So,
discomfort, emotional discomfort to our brain is no
yeah,
different from physical pain. In the brain, the same areas that light up for physical pain are lit up when you're in emotional pain.
yeah,
And uncomfortable emotions are something that we never learn to deal with as children. So we don't know how to process them as adults. This is where our subconscious is in charge. When
yeah,
I pick up my phone, I don't feel, oh, I'm trying to suppress. It's not a logical
yes,
thought that I'm trying to suppress my uncomfortable emotions by binge scrolling. But I know that every time there comes a situation where I'm not handling, something stressful that's happening in my life, my mind is avoiding thinking about the situation by binge scrolling instead. So
true,
being able to practice that awareness as to why am I doing, what's
right.
bringing about this habit, why do I
But
need to watch
I'm gonna call you in, I hope, at some point for a discussion on something that I want to discuss, which is the burden of responsibility.
first
Uh,
child, first child, first child burden of responsibility being
First child or
great
any child, I think it's
any
a
child.
hugely Indian concept, but we'll discuss that at some point. We're running out of time today. Thank you guys for your patience. Today's been such an interesting talk. We're going to end with that 5-minute exercise of yours, Tamanna. So let's
I have
tell us
my
what
little
we need to do.
journal right here, because this is where I did my exercise. So I can give you guys an example from.
Do we need a book and pen?
Yes, that'll be great, because I
Okay.
think it's going to be beyond doing it mentally. So this exercise to find your own values is something that probably might have done at some point in your life, sitting down with a sheet, but it happens as to what values drive is not through something that you feel driven towards. It comes actually from the situation. Your deepest values lie in the situations that created the most emotional impact for you. And emotional impact is carried in times that were happy, the moments that you felt proud, that you felt enough, that you felt good to be yourself, that you felt happy. And uh, your values come from moments of pain as well. Your the values that you have. So look back at your life for now, for this exercise, and because we are running short on time, on something good that you remember that happened in your life, a moment that you feel really good and happy about, joyful, proud, all of these emotions that you can remember strongly. Look back at what was happening in that situation and what created those emotions. And next, look at something that emotionally was a painful experience for you. And avoid looking at something that happened recently, but I would say, something that goes back at least 5 or 10 years, a few years for you to have gained enough perspective on that situation. And think about, what did that situation teach you, or what was the underlying value that you came across in that situation. Now, to help along with this process, I'm just going to open my values, your that I noted from my peaks of happiness, feelings of fulfillment, and peaks of pain. One of my prime values is non-judgment, and that came because I was strongly judged as a teen. I was I went through a period of isolation in my teens from my social group. So non-judgment features as my primary value. I've never been able to hold people into a level of judgment over neither their physical appearance or a lot of aspects that I think we do as a culture because of that. So I recognize non-judgment is a value of mine. Trust, because I had a situation where my trust was betrayed. So trust forms a primary value for me. So if anybody ever tells me their secret, it never goes beyond me. because trust is something that for me was important because it got betrayed. So when you look at your values coming across from situations that created pain, now if I was to act in a way that went against my value, if I betrayed somebody's trust, the pain that it would create for me is created because it's a value that I'm acting against. And you can even look back to, environment could be a primary value because you feel peaceful in nature. You are the happiest when you travel and when you're in nature. That means environment could be a primary value. But if you're not doing things to give back to environment, then you are not being authentic to yourself. And when
Right.
you do that little bit for your environment, so it's not just finding out your values, it's when you act in accordance to your values that creates a different level of authenticity. I think in my own journey, all of these things, my mental journey, things that I've experienced, all of these things have carried a lot of value for me. But I didn't talk about them openly for a while. And that was me feeling inauthentic. And finally, we had to reach a point that, wait a second, this is important for me for it to be my primary occupation. I cannot be inauthentic to myself because the more I'm doing this, I'm not feeling fulfilled with it. Whatever I'm doing otherwise that takes me away from this it's creating a feeling of unfulfillment with it. So when I act in accordance to helping people because I've gone through emotional challenges, I feel deeper sense of fulfillment. So when
Lovely.
you act, when you create a behavior, when you create, uh, you know, when you create your life that is inspired with your values, that is when you are the most authentic self. And a value will never be a need. Love will never be a value unless it's something that you want to give without expectation. If you say love is something that I want to give to other people, are you holding certain expectations from giving that love? Even giving is actually a selfish act because it makes you feel good about yourself. So
True.
being aware of where it is coming from, truly, if you're
Yeah.
doing something to fill an internal gap or to actually be an authentic person.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing so much of your private journey with us. Nandita, can I have you here? Nandita and Zevik have facilitated this whole concept and the series of conversations that I'm doing with different people covering different aspects of how to bring joy and happiness back into our lives. So important right now because at the end of the day, what do we all want? Happiness and peace of mind. I mean, money and bags and shoes and trips and all of that eventually are supposed to make you happy. But if there are simpler things and
That's what the
simpler
world has
ways,
taught us. The world has taught us this that
exactly. We
happier.
we have we have given it a tag now. Everything that brings you happiness has a tag. But actually, it's so much simpler and so free to get happiness and joy. And that's what we are looking at getting to through our inner self. And just to connect our previous conversations, it was all about breathing. Breathe to calm you down so that you're in the moment. And only when you're in the moment can you get back to your true self. So we're just connecting the dots here. So
So,
let's see what next
so
week brings up. Randita, are you here?
yeah, hi Sheetal. Sheetal and Tamanna, I am so glad to be sitting and hearing this conversation. You both were so fabulous, and it was like so many doors open up, that very, very nice conversation. And thank you so much. I just enjoyed this. Sunday can't be better than that. And that's it, what I would like to say. Thank you so much to both of you and everyone who has been with us. Thanks a lot. So it's that's so sweet of Sheetal. She has, this is her concept and her thing, and I'm just there. Okay, so
Zavik
even calling
is
me so nice. I was not prepared for that.
Zavik is possible being the platform for us, and it's all meaningful conversations
Yes.
because there's a lot of this going around. But I thought it's nice to combine, different aspects of it and join the dots for all of us, and also to simplify it for all of us, so that there's a sequence of things that we can do. It can't be just a
So
concept and left in the air. There has to be something we take away from each session, which is practically usable. So, thank you,
so
Tamanna.
so true. So true. And thank you so much. See, Zavik is the whole motto of Zavik is to just make this world a more happier and better place. So you both are doing that. So we all are actually on the same path. We are co-travelers. So enjoying, and I really, really enjoyed my time with both of you. You know, Sunday celebrated well. I would use the word celebrated well because it was so much about self celebration. You know, it was so it, and you both resonate with the my life values, the values what I have for life and how I live. So just loved it. Thank you so much.
Sorry for extending the session today, guys, but the conversation just flowed so easily that I didn't want to end it too soon and cut it short. Thank you, Tamanna.
Thank you so much, Sheetal, for having me here. And I hope for the people watching in today that they didn't just have take back her interesting points from the conversation, that this conversation actually reminds them that to step into our true authenticity and our true power and confidence and joy, the traits that we naturally have as children, true happiness and joy, like the things that we trade for the things that society tells us that we need to chase, like you said, success, money, all of these things. We need to really take a deeper look into
Same here.
what really matters for us. And I hope that there was some kind of take back for all.
I'm sure there is. And looking forward to your book. We have Jyoti who has said thank you for extending it. It was amazing. People hardly talk about these triggers, which I think is true. I mean, everybody likes to avoid talking about the difficult things.
I think
So,
we need to get our vulnerabilities and
yeah,
who we are more into the forefront, because
yeah,
we all have things that we can each other
yeah.
through our own life.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. See you next Sunday with another conversation and another aspect. Thank you, Tamanna. All the best with your book.
Thank you, Sheetal. Thank you. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you for the help, Neelam.